We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H.
Boshko. And all right, there's some pictures associated with this, so if you're on the YouTube video, you'll want to check those out. If not, we'll do our best to describe them to you. Boshko has his Xbox One connected to his Samsung TV with an HDMI cable. I gotta admit, I've read this question more than once, and I am not 100% sure I know exactly what's going on. So this is we're gonna all explore this one together as Rob deciphers this. Sometimes he just wants to be able to turn on his Xbox One, his TV, so he has the HDMI set to output stereo uncompressed, and his TV plays that just fine. Samsung TV. We don't know which TV it is, but it must take an HDMI cable, so it's at least something normal. All right, or more recent thing. He then has an optical cable going to his TV from his Harman Kardon 2600 AVR receiver. Okay. If his AVR receiver is set to that input, it says it's receiving 48 kilohertz PCM when he's playing his Xbox One. He's able to hear it as surround sound, which of course it is not surround sound, it is stereo. It can't be anything but stereo. Even if the TV could accept something but stereo, it almost certainly can't output anything but stereo, because that's just the way TVs are. So it's stereo that he's getting into his receiver.
The signal is stereo coming in, but then he can use something like, well, in the case of Harman Kardon, they default to Logic 7.
Yeah, Logic 7.
Which was Harman's Logic 7, but then you can manually toggle that to Dolby Pro Logic 2 or Dolby Pro Logic 2X or DTS Neo 6. All of those up mixers are available, so that's how he's hearing surround sound. So stereo signal coming out of his TV, going into his AV receiver, but then he can use an up mixer to make it sound like surround sound.
Right. He's read they ought to be using bitstream output for the best audio. Well, you didn't hear it here because that's not the case. On the Xbox One, you do not use bitstream because all you can get is lossy DTS or Dolby digital. You cannot get...
At present, until that update that we talked about in the news comes out in early 2017. But
or they decide they're not going to do it, which is probably what's going to happen. But I'm telling you, they've done it before. They've announced stuff, and it doesn't happen. They have flip-flopped
before, that's right.
And I am not putting any stock... This stuff has not been done in years. It's not going to happen. I don't believe it. And yes, this is me trying to reverse psychology Microsoft right now. I don't care. Anyways, if you put out bitstream, you're getting lossy. What you want is uncompressed something, usually 5.1, because it messes up 7.1.
However, there's other things going on with Boshko's setup. So,
but let's just continue on. I just want people not to hear that bitstream is giving you the best output audio, because it's not true. Anyways, he doesn't want to connect his Xbox One to his receiver using HDMI because he doesn't want to have to always turn on his AV receiver. And of course, the Harman Kardon, is it a little bit older?
It's a little bit older, that's right.
And not only that, but Harman Kardon has never been forefront of the technology curve when it comes to these things. Yeah, it tends to lag behind a few years, and I don't even think they're making receivers anymore. It doesn't really seem like it. But he does not have HDMI standby pass-through, which is a feature that has been around for like 5 years. So what that does is it allows you to keep the receiver off and still power on a source and power on your TV. And usually the way it works, not always, but usually the way it works is if the source that you are using was the same source as the last time you turned the receiver off, it will still send it through without you having to power the receiver.
Yeah, usually you can
on.
either select it to pass through the last source that you were on, or have it always select one source no matter what you do. Usually you have that option, but he doesn't have that option. A little bit older Harman Kardon receiver does not have standby pass-through for HDMI. So what he's doing is sending HDMI from his Xbox One to his TV directly. That's carrying both audio and sound when all he's turning on is his Xbox One and his TV. And then separately, he has optical audio, which is the next part.
Right. So he's connected another optical cable directly from his Xbox to his receiver, and he said, okay, I already said that. All right. However, when he sets his receiver to this input, he doesn't get surround sound. The front display says that the signal coming in is 3-2-.1, but he doesn't hear it in surround sound. If he sets the optical output to stereo, he does hear it in surround sound. So very confused by this one, or helps out or sorting it out. Obviously, you have some sort of surround sound setup. I mean DSP going on whenever you're getting stereo.
Yeah,
I don't remember what 3-2-0.1 means, to be honest with you. It's been so long.
So he was a little bit confused with that too. So what's going on here is when a new signal comes in, the Harman Kardon automatically shows you on its front display the incoming signal.
Right.
So he has set his...
Then.
That's right. So he's set his Xbox One when it's using optical audio to send bitstream out Dolby Digital, which is coming out as Dolby Digital 5.1. So it'll show him 3/2/1 because that's 3 for the front channels, left, center, right, /2 for the surround channels, left and right, /0.1 for the LFE channel.
That makes sense.
It's saying that's what's the incoming signal. Now he's going, okay, so clearly I've set my Xbox One to bitstream output on optical audio, Dolby Digital. The Harman Kardon is saying 3/2/0.1 is the signal coming in. Why aren't I hearing surround sound? Well,
what are you playing? What's your store? I mean, is it stereo that's coming out of like are you watching Netflix and have it set to stereo? In which case it is only going to put out 2 channels anyways.
There could be that, but I was reading through this particular Harman Kardon's manual, and it has a wonderful, horrible thing, which is there is one button on the remote or on the front panel that says surround mode, right? And that's the button that you press over and over and over again, or you press it to bring up the list, and then you press up, down, right? So you press surround mode, then you press up, down to cycle through the various surround modes. Well, in this thing, if you set it to movie or music or game, right, which is what most AV receivers would have you do. Within those, you have all the up mixers. You have Logic 7 as the default. You have Dolby Pro Logic 2, Dolby Pro Logic 2X, DTS Neo 6. All of those up mixers are available within the movie, music, and game surround modes. But Dolby Digital, regular DTS are not in there. Regular Dolby True HD, regular DTS HD Master Audio are not in there. You have to set the surround mode to auto to get those to work.
Makes sense.
So I am almost certain that he set it to movie surround mode, because you're thinking, I'm watching a movie, I want movie surround mode, which works when it's a stereo signal, because it defaults to one of the up mixers, but you have to set it to auto. So we actually emailed back and forth, and he got surround sound working using the optical output from his Xbox One into his AV receiver. So that much worked, but then there's more.
Yeah. So since the Xbox One lets you set the bitstream output to either DTS or Dolby Digital, which is one better than the other. Yeah, the uncompressed one that you didn't choose is better than the other. But you can't
when it's optical, right? If you're using an optical connection, the most you could do uncompressed is stereo.
Well, I would... I mean, it kind of depends on your... I would test them both, but I usually default myself to DTS, especially with the...
DTS in this case has the higher bit rate. It has the higher data rate. It can send more data. It can send up to 1.5 megabits per second, whereas vanilla Dolby Digital maxes out at, what is it? It's under 1 megabit per second anyway. I think it's
like 768 or something like that.
It could be. Right? It's something along, but it's definitely under 1 megabit per second. So DTS has the higher bit rate in this case. And what's going on here is, like we were talking about earlier on in the news, all of the audio presently inside the Xbox One is being decoded and mixed inside as PCM audio. Then, in this case, when you're using the optical output, it's actually sending it through a DTS encoder or a Dolby Digital encoder, and then it's sending that signal out to your AV receivers. So I would probably use DTS just so I can get the higher bit rate, because both will work.
You can test them both, but yeah. I mean, I usually default to DTS in these cases.
Yes.
So yes, how does the bitstream output compare to 5.1 uncompressed or 7.1 uncompressed, and which format is best and why? We've already discussed that. Basically, the uncompressed ones are best because they're not compressed. You're basically taking what's on the disc, which if you're watching the Blu-ray, which is uncompressed audio, you are then sending it through an encoder, or you might be able to just grab the compressed, the lossy compressed track that might be already on there, and sending that through to your receiver, because that's the only thing your receiver can get via optical. It cannot get usually, it definitely can't get DTS Master Audio or Dolby True HD bit streams. First of all, it can't send it, because it doesn't have it. Second of all, they don't allow that to go through anything other than HDMI. There's no reason why it can't, but they just don't allow it. But Rob is saying, or has said a couple of minutes ago, that you can't get the 5.1 uncompressed through your optical connection anyways. But it would be the best, and it's because it has no loss to it. That means that in order to get the audio through what is, I guess, metaphorically a smaller pipe, which is the how big this, how much bandwidth this thing can take, it has to compress it in such a way as some of the data is lost.
That's right.
Some of it is being discarded as being stuff you cannot hear, so they compress it down so that it comes through. The other stuff is better because it doesn't have any of that. It's
lossless, no
lossless.
loss. So
this is not the same as having like some of these files that have stuff in there that you cannot hear. And people are like, well, why are we cutting out the stuff I can't hear? It might do something that I can't hear, but I can feel it in some way. And of course, which is not true because reality.
But yeah, the preferred way to connect for your audio connection, if you could, would be an Xbox One HDMI out to your AV receivers, HDMI in, and then actually you'd probably want to set the Xbox One to 5.1 uncompressed right now because it doesn't handle 7.1 uncompressed properly. It sends what should be in the surround channels to the surround back channels. So it probably the best thing you can choose right now is HDMI 5.1 uncompressed coming out of your Xbox One. That's actually probably the best one to use.
Yeah. Before we go into the next question, what is the deal with not wanting to turn on the receiver? Is there a deal? Is there a reason for this that I'm not
Sometimes he just doesn't want to. Sometimes he just wants to turn on the Xbox One and his TV. That's it.
I understand. I got that. But why?
I don't know. He didn't say.
That would be the thing I would have asked. Anyways, okay. As mentioned, his Harman Kardon does not have HDMI standby pass-through, but it does have the option to either play incoming HDMI audio itself or pass it along untouched to the TV speakers that can be used instead. Mm-hmm. The AVR would, but of course the AVR would have to be fully powered on to do this. How much power would he be wasting? I don't think you would notice it on your bill. That's how much, I think.
Maybe. I mean, again, this is the manual saying it, but it said at idle. It actually mentioned how much power it uses at idle, which not all specs do, but this one did. It says it uses 120 watts at idle, which is a lot. That is unusually high. Normally, it's between 30 and 60. Yeah. But it says it uses 120, and they're probably not lying. It probably actually does use 120 watts when it's powered on, not doing anything, but just sitting there waiting to play something. So, I mean, it's the same as 260-watt light bulbs being on all the time whenever it's on, but that's how much... At which point, why don't you just use your surround sound?
I'll tell you, this is what you do. Right before you're about to turn this thing on and do the thing, go around your house and turn off 2 lights.
Yeah.
And then turn this on. And then,
I mean, the other thing you could do is get an HDMI splitter.
There's no reason you couldn't do that. Yeah.
Because then you can have one HDMI output from your Xbox One feeding HDMI to both your TV directly and to your AV receiver, and then you can have HDMI audio when you want it, going to your receiver, and just to the TV when you don't.
Just get a new receiver. Just get a new receiver. I mean, at this point, all this stuff that we're talking about, I mean, it's all solved with having HDMI standby pass-through.
But all of these things cost money, so it's not fair to say just do it.
But I mean, I think HDMI standby pass-through is even on like the entry-level stuff these days. So I mean, he may really love this receiver, in which case, fine. Just get a splitter or something like that, or just continue doing what you're doing now that you've got it kind of figured out. But you can just get a new receiver and just upgrade and get all the benefits that go along with that. Boshko has his computer connected to his AV receiver using an HDMI cable. When he goes into surround settings on his computer and sets it to output 7.1 audio, he doesn't hear surround sound from his receiver. It sounds like an audio issue again, but we'll go on. And he isn't able to select any surround sound listening modes. If he sets the computer to output stereo, again, he's able to select surround sound listening modes on his AV receiver and hear surround sounds of what's going on here. Well, that's the same thing you were just talking about before, right?
Well, when it comes to the computer, you're going to have a lot of things that you're hearing on the computer that are originally stereo, like anything that's coming off a website, right? Anything that you're through a browser, lots of content is going to be stereo. Now, if you have set the sound output settings on a computer to 7.1, it is always going to send a 7.1 signal, no matter what.
So
Yes.
even though the original was only stereo, that means it's sending a 7.1 signal, but the only channels that contain content are the left and right.
Yeah, left and right. Yeah.
Right, which is exactly why your AV receiver says, you know what I'm getting? I'm getting multi-channel PCM in. It
Right.
says I'm getting a 7.1 multi-channel PCM input signal. There only happens to be content on the left and right, but that's why it won't let you select any surround mode, because it says I'm already getting surround.
It's getting
sound.
surround. You just don't have anything in it, and
Yeah,
that same
there's
thing
just
will
no sounds
happen
in those other channels.
if you connect to your Xbox to your receiver with HDMI and select 7.1 uncompressed audio out or 5.1
Right.
uncompressed audio out. You'll have the same thing. You won't be
But
able to put the stereo
if you're
signal.
playing a stereo source, yeah.
Yeah, if you got a stereo source, you will not be able to say, it's a stereo source coming in. Therefore, I now am going to take that and matrix it out using, Logic 7 or DTS whatever X or whatever.
Yeah.
You won't be able to do that anymore because you will only be able to hear stereo because all the other channels will just have nothing in it.
Yeah, so this came up before with Michael, who was dealing with this with his home theater PC. Again, if the sources you're listening to that are surround sound, like let's say you're watching Netflix off your PC and you're using Microsoft Edge browser to do it, or you more preferably you're actually using the Windows Netflix app, which can output Dolby Digital, then it can send that bit stream. It can send the Dolby Digital bit stream via HDMI to your AV receiver. Your AV receiver does the decoding, even if you have set the sound output settings to 2-channel stereo. So that way, everything that's playing in stereo will come out as stereo. Then you can use your up mixer on it. Everything that comes out as a surround sound bit stream will come out as a bit stream, and your AV receiver can do the decoding, as long as you set it to the auto surround mode. So that kind of is the solution for computers. It's best to sort of, at this point, just leave it as stereo for stuff that is stereo, and then hope, cross your fingers, that anything you want in surround sound will have a bit stream output, because that'll be the only way to do it.
All right, he has a 7.1 speaker setup, but the front display of his AV receiver always shows 3.2.1. Shouldn't it say 3.4.1 since you have 7 speakers? I have a feeling this is a goofy.
No, it's the input signal. The input signal. So the only time you might see 3/4/.1 on that front display is
Blu-ray.
if you were using an HDMI connection and you were listening to a Dolby True HD or a DTS HD Master Audio soundtrack. Yeah. Then it's a
There are
on top
some
of that
games
it's
in
a
7.1, aren't there?
Some games, I suppose there might be.
Yeah,
but
probably.
they won't show that because they'll just come in as multi-channel PCM in this case. Right. So yeah, you'll only see the 3/4/1 if the source itself is actually a 7.1 source. So right now, especially when you're using an optical input, that maxes out at 5.1. You'll never get a 7.1 signal through an optical connection. So that is the front display is showing you what's coming in, not what's going out.
That's right. Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AV Rant.
Now go out and listen to something.